conversation. Then another friend of mine was there, all right, and I had him join the discussion after a while because he had a little bit more boisterous youth than I had. So I wanted him to share from his own experience some of the outcomes of this. And we had a really interesting conversation about things that you do, things that you don't do. And since we're all boys, all right, we will talk about boys stuff and how boys see things and how boys respond to stuff and why you should or shouldn't. And it's a never-ending discussion, but it's one that you must be having constantly so that you can get a sense of where their mind is set and you can contain some of those thinkings. So, but you pray for them constantly because in the place of prayer, some of these things come to mind. You need to talk about this, you need to share this. You haven't spoken about this part, bring this conversation up. And that's the place of prayer. And if you want to understand why that is, again in Scripture, you look at Job's example. In Job chapter 1 verse 5, the Bible tells us that, and it was so, when the days of their feasting were gone about, that Job sent and sacrificed them and rose up early in the morning and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, it may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continually. And if you take Job's pattern, all right, and you're constantly praying for them, it's important to know that you can only do what you can do. Everything I've told you are the things that I'm doing and trying to do. I don't seize anybody's phone. I don't take anything from anybody. I'll give you phone. I give you iPad, I give you laptop. My only rule is very simple. I must reach you when I want to reach you. If we have an appointment, you keep the appointment. You don't keep the appointment, you lose every device that you have because you have no reason why you should not keep the appointment. I will not chase you, you will chase me. All right? If I have to look for you, then it means you don't need the communication tool. So on that day, you will call me. You will call me at the appointed time. I will not look for you. I will defer it. If I look for you once, I look for you again, I will take all those devices away from you. You will have access to nothing unless you follow the rules. And I will not remind you more than once. Everybody knows it. And with so doing, and prayer, people, my prayer is that my boys will be great role models for the society and become responsible family men, and their children after them will follow after. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We can do better than that, please. Well, I'm really grateful to God for this event, and I know we are learning. Please, if you've been blessed, raise your hand. Yeah, powerful. I have a quotable quote. I don't know if you wrote it down. It says, what you've taught your children is not proven by what they do, but by what they in turn teach their children. That was I just can't imagine, putting this in memory and saying it regularly. Because Stephen Covey would say, begin with the mind. Don't look at the now. Tomorrow when the story is told. Today we have all manner of individuals that are leaders. So embarrassed because they were products of parents. But these are not the kind of parents we want to be. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Our speakers have had to keep to the time. I hope you have your questions. We want to set the stage for 10 minutes. And I would like to invite Pastor Israel Aye. He would coordinate the question session. We want it to be very interactive. We expect you to write your questions down. And if questions, we'll have to ask you to say your questions verbally. Thank you. Would like to invite upstage our speakers. The last two speakers, please. Would like to invite both of you upstage. Yes. Okay, yeah, okay.
No, it's easier to do it from here, so at least I can interact with the floor. All right, so while they're settling down, I think it's fitting again to just give them a very big round of applause. For sure, something that is beginning to emerge here as a central thought or theme, and we have at least 2 to 3 other speakers. Our keynote speaker, by the way, hasn't spoken yet, so they're just warming up, and just be prepared to be blown away. Okay? And so this is, like we said, the 10-minute session. We'll take 1 or 2 questions, very crisp, straight to the point, regarding what they talked about, please. Now, I recognize that some of you may have questions about parenting, general ones. You can write those down, and if you want to speak to, and in this, I've probably taken liberties. I have not necessarily spoken with the speakers to ask if they'd be available. And if they're not, we probably will just send it to them in order for them to do so. But just before we take the questions, I'd like to pose a quiz. So you think about it, and then we'll address the quiz when I come up again to take the questions. And so the quiz is simply this. Why did Abraham, in his intercession for Sodom and Gomorrah, why did Abraham stop at the number 10? You remember that Abraham started at 50, and he got down to 45, to 40, to 35, to all the way to 10, and at 10, he stopped. He didn't ask any more for that. So the question perhaps is, would God have saved Sodom for the sake of one righteous person? Yes or no? And if yes, why didn't Abraham go down to 5, or indeed to 1? Because as I think eventually found out, there was at least 1. So that's a quiz. I'd like us to think about it. So to my lot, 10 minutes, questions. Anybody who just wants to ask a question? Otherwise, I'll take the one that is in my hands. All right. Okay, so let me take this one. Say, how do you help a child that is into himself so that child will grow and not have inferiority complex? I think that will go first to the educator, and then Pastor Obi may chip in if he wishes to. So an introvert, a child that is really by themselves, how do they not become plagued by a feeling of inferiority?
Okay, you can hear me. Now of course, we encounter children who are quiet and to themselves, and usually it could be a factor of a lot of things, because normally a normal child does not see the boundaries. But at some point, you begin to see children, very young children, 3, 4, who begin to keep to themselves. They're quiet and they're shy, and that could be as a result of a lot of things. So you need to find out what is causing the child to be that way. You know, maybe the parents was a bit too strict. I mean, we can get some very strict parents, or it could be as a result of an experience. But what we try to do when we encounter children like that is that we give them a friend. So we give them a pair, maybe somebody their age in the school, to be their buddy. They have a buddy, they sit with the person, they talk to the person, they communicate with the person. And of course, you begin to pull them out. And you don't just throw them into the deep ocean, flood them with people. You introduce people gradually to them and you talk to them. As parents at home, you have to do the same thing, because sometimes they don't want to talk to you. So you have to look for a friend outside their age that you give them, that will become their friends, and that you ensure that you deliberately give them time to spend together. I think that's the start.
All right, thank you very much. Let me just get to the next question, because we're really constrained by time. And this is for you, Obi. He says, what is the hope? And this is a very touching question. He says, what is the hope for raising boys without a father? And that's probably a single mother. So what happens when both parents cannot... Okay, so you'd answer that. And then the second one, so what happens when both parents cannot agree on parenting goals, or if one party does not believe in the need to set one? But we begin with the first, so that two in one. Then.
Okay. You've heard it said that it takes a whole village to raise a child. Yes, there might not be a father in the home because of whatever reason. All right? But there's always a male figure around. So it's really about trying to make sure you find an appropriate male figure to associate with. Remember, parenting is about sacrifice in part. So you have to identify the person you need to try to get your family a little closer to so your children can see a little bit more. If you look at the story of what actually happened was that Ruth, when she went in that place, and then she was now instructed that when after he has eaten, mark the place where he lies down, and then go and uncover his feet and lie there. So when she did that, Boaz's response could have been, who is this rascal troubling me? But he recognized his own responsibility and accepted the responsibility that was there to pursue it and do it. And Naomi chose him for that because she said this man is a responsible person. So we also have to identify responsible figures around, move close to them. If they are truly responsible as we thought, they will recognize what is happening and take upon themselves that obligation. So we all have it around us and we know what we must do when we see that, and then we go and do it. But I assure you, God will never leave a vacuum. He will never leave you without help.
Let's put our hands together for that. I like that expression. God will never leave a vacuum. He would never leave us without help. Indeed, for some reason, I found myself sort of reflecting over this earlier today. And somebody would ask, well, what if there's not one parent or the other? But again, it's a bit like disability, right? So usually you find that if you lose one bodily function, then the other ones tend to develop to compensate for that one part that is missing. It is to lean on the faithfulness of God. Thank you very much, Obi. That's good. So there's a very quick one, and we've got less than 5 minutes now. It says, hello, Mrs. Aye. Do you have a social media handle, and how can we follow up for feedback and more? Okay, sorry, I should have listened. So I guess that will be made available. She has social media handle. We'll probably get that and put it on screen so people can copy and hit her up in the process. But by the way, does anybody from the congregation have a question that is not written down? No? All of them are written down. Nobody wants to ask the question openly. All right, it says, what way will you handle your fears of handling a 6-year-old girl who gets scared of failures? Instead of failing, she'll rather not answer.
Okay.
And that's probably just for all children.
It's for all children. I mean, you know, like I said, the experiences of children begin to define them from very early. Now, we had an experience, something like that, not fear of failure, but dislike of self. And this started exhibiting itself in my daughter when she was about 3. She just did not like the way she looked. She didn't like her hair, especially. I mean, she didn't like the fact that whenever we wash the hair just stands up and doesn't go down. And what's her experience? Her experience is that we buy Barbie dolls for her. Her experience is that she watches Hannah Montana. She's on Disney Channel. Everybody's hair looks nice and flat. But she just wonders why her hair just keeps standing. And this started exhibiting itself as early as 3. She just did not like it. I mean, the typical Nigerian mom, my solution to, after begging you 2 or 3 days, is to just whack you. Who has the patience? I would scream, shout, and this always happens on Sunday because Sundays we wash her hair, we take off the hair, then wash it on Sunday, and then we will come late to church. She won't want to come to church because of the hair. Oh, I don't like my hair. I don't like the fact that. And so my husband came to the rescue. God gave him inspiration. And so he talks to her nicely, calls her princess, took her to ShopRite one of those days, bought a bead card with a tiara, with all those. I know those of you with young parents, you know what that, the beads, the bangles, and he called her his princess. That, look, Hannah Montana and all of those people are not as beautiful as you. He just kept, impressing it upon her daily. And on Sunday, she wears it to church. She looks like a princess. She holds her wand. And you won't believe it. How I got to know that my daughter had moved beyond this was when she was 6. When she was 6, I worked in the school she was in, and she had a gang of friends. They were telling, and some girl came to me and said, Mrs. Aye, Kes doesn't want me to be in her group. I was surprised because I know my daughter, she was timid, she didn't like the way she looked, and here she was, she has a gang of friends, and she was dictating who should be in that group. And she was 6 at this time, who should be in that group and who shouldn't be. So I believe that helped because her father affirmed her, So anytime you get a child who has those kind of challenges, please affirm them, give them every reason to make them feel special, and I believe they will get out of it. Thank you.
All right. But just so you know, that father is yours truly. Okay, and then to the point about the failure as well is, again, just give your children permission to fail. I think if you react in a certain way when they fail, then they're not able to explore and to discover. So you selectively, you don't make them too comfortable with the concept of failure, but I think that you must also find them the permission to fail. We're out of time, but I'll ask one more question, Oga, and that goes to Obi. It says, and by the way, we've got far more questions than we'll have time to take, so I'll have to apologize in advance. What I said is that if it's very critical, I probably would ask you to wait and speak with any of the persons. Otherwise, we'll take these questions, we'll respond to all of them or send them to people who will respond to them, and we'll post it on the marriage site. And by the way, I think we should do something about enlisting people to the closed user group. Maybe at some meeting today. I think that was a gap, to make sure that we enlist people to the closed user group so that they can access this question. So a very final question this morning is, this first session is, how does one effectively parent? And this is a big issue. There's probably not a culture of, I'm not sure the word surrogacy, maybe adoption. So well, how do you effectively parent a non-biological child? Particularly if the child has been modeled differently in his or her biological family before they became your responsibility. How do you really love somebody who is not your biological child?
Okay. First, I think that you need to accept that parenting is not about biology. All right. If not...
I think we need to put our hands for that.
If not, it means that God can only love Jesus Christ. All right, and the rest of us don't count. So I think that it's not about biology, it's about responsibility. And somebody that's been brought within your space, and you have responsibility for the person. Now, the parenting is really guidance, leadership, nurture. That's what the is. All right. The act whatever of having a child is not parenting. All right. So that's why there are different conversations. So if you can cross that small gap in your mind, then we can have the rest of the discussion, which then says that you will do everything that you would have done, all right, for anyone under your watch. And I think for me, at this point, I can say what I'm saying in truth because I made different decisions for my different children. So my pattern has been to my wife, we send our children to school overseas when they are 14. So for the first one, we sent him to a boarding school. For the second one, we sent him to stay with a friend. Sending him to stay with a friend was something we had never planned. Mind you, I have a brother and I have a sister in the same country. But I decided that rather than send him to my brother or send him to my sister, I will send him to a friend. So for you to do that, you must know the person you're sending the person to, and know that the person will do certain things the way you will do it yourself. Those things that the person has to do are things that I, as a parent, will have to do. So would that person not have to parent my son? So it cannot be about biology. It's about responsibility. What then intrigued me when I finally said yes was that this, my friend, one day called me and was telling me about how he has been preparing for this he's going to do for my son that he considers a great privilege in his life that he has to do. So I'm asking God the question. I think that for everyone, therefore, who has the privilege that you did not have, I said it's a privilege. The things that you need to do, you are a steward that has been given a great responsibility, and you will attend to it far more than what you were obliged to do, because God has chosen you as someone that has to do for somebody else that has that actually give birth to that child. But it's no different in activity for what you must do. You love the person, you accept the person, and you treat the person as you would your own.
All right. Thank you very much. So let's put our hands together for Pastor Obinia Abajwe and Bamituni Aye, who